All right, hello. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, we're excited to share a story hoping to inspire other teams and organizations, in particular when navigating their way through rolling out new solutions like resource management by Smartsheet. It's also known as RM, and also improving the way that these teams and organizations manage their work. With me today, I have Emily. Emily is from Local Government Procurement, or LGP, and she's going to be sharing her and her team's experience, their insights and best practices when implementing resource management. Thanks so much for joining us, Emily.
No problem.
To start off with, Emily, could you please tell us a little bit about local government procurement, what you do there, your role, who you support, and just the organisation?
Yeah, sounds great. So Local Government Procurement, or LGP, is a leading procurement organisation and a prescribed entity under Section 55 of the Local Government Act, which means that the New South Wales councils can utilise our supply agreements, and these are coordinated by LGP without the need to go to tender themselves. So we also provide strategic procurement solutions and nationally recognised training courses through the Local Government Training Academy. So in my role as LGP's project manager, I work on various internal projects to streamline our processes and maximise our productivity. So one of these projects was implementing Smartsheet's RM tool, which has made a world of difference to the way that we approach project and workforce planning at LGP.
That's fantastic. I think some people might be wondering, okay, well, what's the point of having a resource management tool in the business? So I was hoping maybe you could take us back to where things started and maybe some of the problems and any issues that you were trying to solve when you first looked at RM.
Yeah, of course. So I suppose when we first started looking at resource management with Smartsheet, we were kind of responding to a growing set of challenges around visibility, planning, and consistency within the organization. So at that point, our work was becoming more complex, more cross-functional, but our approach to resourcing hadn't really evolved at the same pace. So resource information was spread across spreadsheets, across emails, and individual team knowledge. So I suppose this made it kind of difficult to answer some questions, but very, critical questions, like who was working on what, how much capacity we really had as a team, and where bottlenecks were likely to emerge as well. So we were trying to solve fundamentally. I suppose it was the lack of end-to-end visibility and consistency in how resources were requested, allocated, and tracked then across projects. So we needed a solution that could scale with us, integrate with our existing Smartsheet project plans, and provide both operational teams and leadership with real-time insight into capacity, demand, and utilization. So I suppose that's what led us into exploring resource management within Smartsheet. So it's not just a scheduling tool for us. It's really about bringing structure, transparency, and confidence into the way that we plan our work.
That's great to hear. It sounds like things were a little bit hectic for you. What sort of capabilities did RM have that stood out to you and made you and your team decide to go ahead and pilot the solution?
Yeah, so there were several capabilities that really stood out to us and ultimately gave us the confidence to pilot the resource management tool within Smartsheet. So first and foremost, it was around that centralized visibility, which I mentioned. So the ability to see all the resources and their availability and allocations across projects in one place. So it immediately addressed that challenge of that fragmented data that we had before. Another key differentiator was the seamless integration into our Smartsheet project plans. So because we were already using Smartsheet for delivery, resource management didn't really feel like an additional system to maintain them. So the updates flowed kind of naturally from project schedules to resource plans. I guess that reduced duplication and kind of improved data accuracy then within the organization. And we also really enjoyed the forward planning capacity and demand planning kind of capabilities within the tool as well. It kind of shifted us from a more reactive resourcing to proactive planning space.
Wonderful. And at LGP, you decided to, rather than going straight into a full rollout, you decided to actually do a pilot of RM. So I was hoping you could just talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when LGP decided to explore resource management, we were quite deliberate about organizing a pilot initially, as you said, rather than moving straight into a full rollout. We didn't really want to assume kind of a one size fits all approach across the whole organization without testing it in kind of a real delivery environment. So partnering with InfoSpark for the pilot gave us a really structured and low risk way to validate the tool and the approach before a wider rollout. The pilot allowed us to test project management, or sorry, resource management, with a defined group of projects and teams, which ensured that we could assess both the technical fit, but also the behavioral change required to sustain the usage of the tool. And throughout the trial, we were able to test our resourcing assumptions and data quality in a controlled setting. So to understand the level of effort required to maintain accurate allocations and forecasts, and also to gather feedback from pilot participants in the usability and overall value of the tool. So for those reasons, I guess that's why we proceeded with a pilot as opposed to committing to a broader rollout. But yeah, as you know, this was a very successful pilot, so we ended up rolling it out across the wider organization anyway.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Sounds like some of what you were talking about there were some of the particular goals that you had as well that you needed. I was wondering if you had any specific success criteria within that that you had in place during that that time.
Yeah. So I suppose from the very start, we knew that the pilot of the resource management tool needed to show real and measurable value to LGP, of course. So we kind of set out a small set of maybe three success factors that would guide whether or not we would go ahead with a full rollout. So the first was around visibility and confidence in the data itself. So we wanted a single kind of reliable view on who was working on what and when. So success meant that project managers and leaders could use the resource management data with confidence without having to fall back on those manual checks. I suppose the second success criteria was around better forward planning and risk identification. So the goal was to move from reactive resourcing to proactive planning. We needed the pilot to show that users could spot over allocations and bottlenecks earlier and have better conversations with their managers about how to prioritize work. I suppose lastly, adoption and usability was another key factor for success. So we kept a close eye on how easily project managers and team leaders could use the tool. Success wasn't really about everyone loving the tool from day one. It was about kind of consistent, repeatable use of the tool and clear understanding of how it supported decision making within the organization. So ultimately, having those clear set of success criteria gave us the confidence to know if resource management was working well for us as an organization, really.
Fantastic. Those are really good success criteria, and the adoption is something that I'm interested in finding out a little bit more. So I'll ask you a couple of questions later on about that.
Sure.
So during the pilot, how did you approach the planning to make sure that it all stayed structured and you didn't lose any momentum?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I think during the pilot, I was really deliberate about the scope of the pilot. So we started actually quite small, focusing on a defined set of teams, so five business units overall. And that allowed us to pilot the tool without overwhelming the entire organization. We kept a really steady rhythm with kind of short, regular check-ins to track progress, to address blockers, and to ensure any updates were being captured consistently. I suppose using the Smartsheet dashboards and automated reminders made the work quite visible to everyone, so that everyone was also on the same page. Equally important, I suppose, was clarity around roles and responsibilities. I think everyone knew what they were responsible for, from updating allocations to reviewing dashboards. And whenever we encountered a process hiccup or anything, we treated it as a learning moment. So adjusting quickly to keep that momentum going, as you were mentioning. So by combining that kind of focus, visibility, and like continuous iteration on those roles and responsibilities and how to use the tool, the pilot really stayed on track and gave us the confidence to expand resource management across the organization.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like using that approach that helped you manage communication throughout the pilot just to keep your stakeholders and users all aligned. Was there anything else that you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I suppose so. In terms of communication, we provided weekly updates to project teams, so they always knew what was happening with allocations and with capacities. And we always fed up summaries for leadership to kind of highlight trends and risks and opportunities as well in relation to the tool. Using, as I said, that those Smartsheet dashboards was also really helpful in terms of visibility, particularly for senior leadership. And I suppose the communication is not just about sending those updates. We actively also sought feedback throughout the project with short surveys, workshops, and check ins. So we allowed users to kind of share their challenges and suggestions as well. So this kind of improved adoption, but also helped us to adjust quickly to keep the pilot moving forward as well.
So you were engaged with the InfoSpark team. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how InfoSpark supported you, where there was training implemented in-house to your wider team at LGP. So I was just wondering if you can tell us how was the training designed and how did you approach that?
Yeah, so the training was completely bespoke, I suppose. It was designed by InfoSpark to be practical, to be hands-on, and also to be directly aligned with how LGP would actually use resource management. So that was really beneficial because it wasn't just kind of a one-size-fits-all training plan. InfoSpark worked really collaboratively with us to develop that training. And I suppose the approach to the training was quite multifaceted. So we kind of started with informational, a kind of foundational sessions for all users, which was led by InfoSpark's founder and CTO, Lindsay Hamilton. So he ensured that everyone understood how to navigate the system. And then I explained to the individual teams within that training session how the ORM tool would apply to their functions specifically using real project examples. And following that formal training, I hosted a one-off one-to-one for each user and a weekly interactive workshop for each team. So that kind of kept them engaged and allowed, I suppose, a space for feedback and for questions. And I think this hands-on element really helped to enforce the learning, but also build confidence quickly within the teams. And finally, just to kind of put the icing on the cake, I created a written user guide and uploaded a recording of the training to our LGP software training page on our intranet. So it felt that it was really important to provide those materials to ensure that the training could be reinforced and information could be documented and stored for future reference. For example, if we were to onboard anyone new in the organization that would need to use the ORM tool. So I think that combination of the structured training sessions, the practical workshops, but also that ongoing support delivered through, either the user guide or, by the teams reaching out to me directly, we could really adopt resource management smoothly and really efficiently.
Well done. It sounds like you covered all of the bases there for the training. How did you make sure that the training was practical and relevant for the different types of users?
Yeah, so I think it was really, really important for us to use real project data throughout the training. I think that was key in ensuring that the training was absolutely relevant to each of the teams. So the participants could kind of immediately see in the system in the context of their own actual work.
Mm.
So this made the learning much more tangible for them. And InfoSpark helped us immensely in this area because they worked with me in the background to ensure all of our projects were actually linked into the tool prior to conducting the training, so that everything that the users were seeing within the tool was their own work, as opposed to like a demo project. I suppose the one-to-ones and internal workshops that I hosted as well also allowed the users to try tasks themselves and to ask questions in real time, which helped, I think, helped the teams to understand their specific uses for their own functions.
Fantastic. You mentioned earlier getting feedback from your users. What steps did you take after or during the training to gather that feedback and measure how things were landing with all of the users? I was wondering if you have any reports or insights that you could please show us.
Yeah, absolutely. So after we rolled out the resource management training, I really wanted to understand how it was landing with people. So to get an idea of whether the tool was actually helping them day to day, of course. So the first thing I did was to send out a formal survey to everyone who completed the training. So that gave us structured feedback on things like how helpful the training was, whether the tool improved visibility or saved them time, how often they were using it, and whether they would want to keep using it going into 2026. So referencing kind of the further rollout there. And we also collected open text comments, which were incredibly insightful. So I think people were saying things like the tool is really easy to navigate, which was great to hear. And even that the training team was clear, concise, and super patient, which was also lovely to hear. That's very much in reference to the InfoSpark team there. So beyond the survey, I really kept the conversation going through those workshops that I mentioned,
Mm.
which kind of validated those survey results as well, because I could see the real behavior behind the comments and behind the results that we got. I do actually have a quick slide that I would like to share with you. So that kind of summarizes the results of the survey that we got. So in terms of the key insights from the survey, so this is basically a summary of the insights that we got. So 93% of the respondents shared that they would like to continue using the tool into 2026. So that really indicates in the pilot that I suppose all the teams really enjoyed using the tool and indicated great interest in using it further throughout the wider rollout. 100% of the respondents saved time or increased their visibility of tasks. So, look, resource management does exactly what it says on the tin. So everyone was super happy with I guess, the use cases of the tool. 93% of respondents were checking the tool at least weekly, which indicated frequent usage. I think 14% of those respondents were actually checking it daily, which might be slightly overkill, but I was happy to see it. And then finally, I suppose not finally, but we saw also an uptake of the use of the Smartsheet sheets by 35% across the organization, which we really love to see because, of course, the more project data we have in the system, the easier it is for us to track our projects and to make sure they're all running smoothly. So we were happy to see that. And then finally, I guess this is very much compliments to the InfoSpark team. The respondents rated the training experience to be 4.57 stars out of 5. So they were very impressed with the training that was provided by InfoSpark as well. So that's just a quick summary of the survey results. But yeah, overall, I think the insights that we got showed that the tool was super successful. Everyone enjoyed using it, and yeah, it just indicated that we were really keen to keep using it into 2026.
Wow, those key insights, the numbers looking on your screen there, I don't think you can ask for much more when when
Yeah,
going through a
absolutely.
pilot. How did you use that feedback then to either, I guess you can't improve too much on some of those numbers, but how did
Yeah.
you use that feedback to adjust the rollout?
Yeah, so once we had all those survey results and the feedback coming in from the workshops and the one-to-ones, we didn't want to just like store the information and not use it. So we definitely very much used it to refine how the rollout progressed. So one of the biggest things that the feedback told us was that people liked the tool, they found it helpful, but they did need ongoing support to build habits. So because of that, we kept running the weekly workshops. So initially, I was just going to run the workshops for 3 weeks, but we actually extended that beyond the 3 weeks to ensure that the teams had also the support they needed. And I think it also reinforced that kind of continuous engagement, which was a really deliberate part of phase one of this project, which was the pilot. Based on the feedback that we got from the teams, and I think the survey also showed like the strong adoption indicators, obviously. So, 100% of people feeling like they saved time by using the tool, for example. These metrics really gave us confidence to recommend continuing business as usual usage and exploring a broader rollout across the business. So if you think about the survey results, instead of it kind of informing how we might improve the training program, because as you said, like you couldn't really improve based on the results that we got, but it basically informed us or informed the decision to move forward with the license planning for 2026 because we had the data to show genuine organizational value of the tool. So the feedback and reporting directly shaped the recommendation to continue and to scale.
Fantastic. Thank you. Some of the insights that you've just shared, and perhaps even some of the success criteria that you talked about early on, that would have all been really important for decision makers in order to approve the pilot to then roll out RM. From early on, how did you go about thinking about what those decision makers might need to see to evaluate and approve the pilot?
Yeah. So we knew that decision makers wouldn't just care about the features of the tool. Of course, they want to see the practical evidence value of the tool. So
Mm,
we kind of focused on being clear about the goals up front. So I mentioned those kind of success factors earlier
mm,
in our conversation, but we really wanted to show how resource management would give visibility into who was working on what, help flag those kind of over allocations really early, and make planning a bit more predictable for the organization. So we also made sure that we could track metrics and kind of progress in a way that was easy to understand, like how many projects were being actively managed, how accurate forecasts were, and how teams were adapting to the tool. So essentially, we wanted to give leadership a clear picture of what success would look like before we even started the project, so that they could see that the pilot wasn't just an experiment. It was kind of a controlled, measurable way to prove value before committing to a full rollout.
yeah. Thank you. And that understanding that you had, did that in any way shape adjustments to the pilot as you progressed through it?
I think so, yeah. So knowing what leadership needed to see was key in shaping how we designed and adjusted the pilot as it went along. So from the start, we built in ways to track progress and show tangible results. So things like allocations being updated, capacity being visible, and forecast accuracy improving. So
Mm,
as the pilot progressed, we kept looking at those metrics and feedback from users, and then we made those adjustments where required. So, for example, if some teams weren't keeping allocations up to date, we flagged this to the team manager and added kind of extra check-ins in, as I mentioned, like extending those workshops or adding in additional one-to-ones to ensure that everyone was understanding how to use the tool correctly. So basically,
mm.
keeping decision makers in mind meant that we weren't just running the pilot for the sake of testing the tool. We were constantly aligning it with the evidence and insights that leadership needed to feel confident about scaling it further.
Fantastic. I'm keen to hear a little bit more around those one-to-ones and how you stayed closely engaged with the users to support that adoption and just understand how the tool was being received.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I suppose during my one-to-ones with everyone, I think it was clear that everyone understood like the reason we were implementing resource management.
Mhm.
They understood completely the basic usage of the tool, but it was about kind of, I guess, defining exactly within their specific role, how they can use the tool a bit more specifically. Because, for example, our SPS team is more focused on consulting. So they would be more focused on those billable hours and non-billable hours compared to a team like our contracts team, who wouldn't necessarily need to be looking at that aspect of the tool. So yeah, it was about kind of adjusting those minor details for each of the teams within those one-to-ones. And I think they found that really helpful. And it gave kind of a clearer picture of how the tool would be used specifically within each team.
Wonderful. And were there any other moments where you needed to adapt your approach along the way? And I guess, how did you respond? Was there anything that didn't go exactly to plan?
Yeah, I guess there's definitely moments where we needed to adapt. I think no pilot
Mm.
ever goes perfectly. That's kind of the nature of it.
Yeah.
So this was no different. For example, kind of early on, we noticed that some teams weren't updating their allocations consistently. So they were really used to using Smartsheet to track their projects, but it was those additional columns where they had to track their hours. It was kind of a challenge to ensure that the teams were updating those quite regularly. Um, so as a result of them not updating the allocations consistently, the dashboards then weren't giving an accurate picture of capacity. So instead of kind of pushing harder, we kind of took a step back and asked why that might be. So we realized that some users weren't overly confident on how to use certain features of the tool or how their sheets connected with the tool itself. So we quickly ran short kind of refresher sessions for those individuals, and that kind of spurred me on to also create that user guide so that there was a reference point for everyone to kind of see, I guess, technically how to use certain functions within the tool.
Wonderful. That would have been very helpful for them. Looking back, how did having an external partner like InfoSpark fit into the project?
I think that having InfoSpark on board was really, really valuable for us, not just for the technical expertise, but also in the way that they helped us structure the pilot and build
Mhm.
confidence across the team as well. So they didn't just show us kind of how the tool worked, they helped us to design the pilot. And I think through kind of think through what success looked like for us and kind of helped us with that. But also planning the training in a way that was practical and that really fit in with our day-to-day work. So it was a really collaborative approach to all of those tasks. And having that external perspective made it easier to avoid kind of common mistakes that we might have come across if we were, working internally and just trying to figure out the tool ourselves. So during the pilot, InfoSpark were also there to support kind of problem solving and adapt the approach when challenges came up. So whether that was refining dashboards or improving reporting or even helping with that hands-on training, it really felt like a partnership rather than just a vendor relationship.
That's fantastic to hear. And you clearly have a lot of expertise in-house, but working with a partner has sounds like it was very valuable. Which parts of the pilot did you find were most valuable to work with a partner, and which parts did you feel were best handled internally at LGP?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because of course it's such a collaborative effort.
Mm,
So working with a product expert like InfoSpark was really valuable in the parts of the pilot that required that deep technical know-how or experience. So they could tell us kind of the best practice setups, I suppose. So for
mm,
example, they helped us configure the tool, set up the reporting, design workflows in a way that kind of aligned with Smartsheet's capabilities, but also our business needs. And their insight also helped us to avoid, as I said, those common mistakes that we might have come across if we worked kind of internally. So for example, like something like overcomplicating allocations or creating dashboards that weren't scalable. So on the other hand, you mentioned kind of what would be best handled internally, and I suppose
mm.
um, it's anything that required knowledge of the business, our teams, and our processes. So, including things like defining roles and responsibilities for people
Yeah.
while using the tool, deciding what projects and what teams we were to include in the pilot, and making sure that the training content really reflected how people actually work in their day-to-day environment. So, in essence, I suppose the partnership worked because we could leverage InfoSpark's expertise while keeping I suppose the expertise where it mattered, but then while keeping the parts that required organizational context and culture in-house. So that
Mm.
balance really helped the pilot to run smoothly and set us up for a successful rollout in the end.
That's fantastic. And based on that experience that you had, what advice would you give to any other organizations about balancing that internal effort with that external effort and support when implementing a solution such as RM?
So based on our experience with this project, I think external partners bring really valuable knowledge, things like best practices, the technical setup, the insights from other organizations, and that can actually save us an awful lot of time and contribute towards kind of a lower risk rollout, I would say. But of course, the parts of the rollout that require kind of deep understanding of our own business and culture should be really done in-house, as I mentioned. So I think a good approach is to leverage that external support for guidance and structure, technical know-how, and then that way you can get the benefits of the expertise without kind of losing ownership or engagement internally, I think. So I would also advise others to kind of keep communication and feedback loops really tight when working on a project like this, because I think, both with your team and with the external partner, if the communication runs really smoothly, if you ensure that you're keeping that communication really tight, then you can adapt super quickly if things aren't landing as expected. So that's kind of my advice, I suppose, for other organizations.
Wonderful. And finding the right partner will be important. How would you sum up your overall experience working with InfoSpark as your platinum partner?
Of course, so overall, my experience working with InfoSpark was extremely positive. I can't, compliment you guys enough. So you weren't just there to implement a tool. I feel as though you really acted as a partner for us. So helping us to design the pilot, train the team, and then adapt the approach as we went along as well. So what stood out to me most, I suppose, was how practical and hands-on, but also flexible InfoSpark are. So you guys really helped us move quickly. You helped us solve challenges as they came up and ultimately gave us the confidence that resource management could deliver real value for our business. So in short, I suppose InfoSpark made a very complex project feel really manageable and ultimately really set us up for success with this rollout.
I'm really glad to hear that. Your experience implementing a resource management tool to help your organization better understand how you can maximize your productivity has been described by us as the gold standard experience. What best practices do you think made it so effective?
So, firstly, I was absolutely chuffed to hear that working with LGP was considered a gold standard experience for InfoSpark. So, many thanks to the team for that lovely feedback. In terms of best practices, I think there's four key things that really come to mind. So, firstly, and I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, but it's kind of around having those clear goals and success criteria from the start. We knew exactly what we wanted the pilot to achieve, which was, of course, better visibility, forward planning, and accurate forecasting. So having those success criteria really defined early on helps you to measure success throughout the project. So that would be, I guess, item number one when designing a project like this.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think having a really structured yet flexible approach is also key. I had a project plan in place for execution, which I shared with InfoSpark. So they were fully aware of our timelines and our expectations. But our partnership also stayed really agile as well at the same time. So when issues came up, we were able to adapt quickly rather than sticking really rigidly to the plan. So I highly commend InfoSpark for your ability to be really flexible in this sense. Thirdly, then I suppose planning practical and hands-on training, which I mentioned earlier in the conversation as well, and conducting that frequent engagement with the teams was really important. So that ultimately led us to success as well. And finally, continuous success measurement and feedback based on those success criteria was key to moving towards a full rollout. So we didn't just train the teams and walk away. We monitored usage, we gathered feedback, and we made sure that senior leadership could really see the impact of the tool. So that combination of evidence and support made the rollout successful and absolutely repeatable.
Fantastic. You gave me some advice to other organizations around partnering and getting that support. I'm hoping you can provide me some more advice. If another organization was about to roll out resource management or another Smartsheet solution, what advice would you give them?
So I'd say the biggest piece of advice is to balance planning, support, and also flexibility. So keeping those three kind of main themes in mind when designing or trialing a something like resource management. So as I mentioned previously, starting by being really clear on what success looks like for your organization with this tool. And to know how you're going to show your senior leaders or decision makers the value of the tool. I'd also say leveraging external partners like InfoSpark is really key to ensuring that your organization understands all the capabilities of the tool and that you have the support that you require when it comes to training and implementation. I would also advise organizations to make the training practical and relevant with kind of hands-on exercises and real data that really drives the impact of resource management home for a lot of people and make sure that the adoption actually sticks with teams. And also not to underestimate the power of ongoing engagement. So checking in with the users and being ready to adapt when challenges come up. And of course, InfoSpark were incredibly available for that kind of support aspect as well when it came to engaging with all users of resource management within our organization. So I suppose if you plan well, if you partner smartly, and if you continuously engage with your teams, there is no doubt that you'll have a successful resource management rollout.
Well done. Congratulations on such a successful rollout.
Thank you.
So, what is next for LGP?
Great
What are you looking
question.
to do from here?
That's a really great question. So, in terms of next steps, and we're in January of 2026 now, so it's a new year, and we're ready to roll out phase two of the resource management project. So, of course, phase one was our pilot. We were testing the tool, we were making sure it worked for us as an organization, and we certainly proved that. So we have purchased our licenses, for our full licenses for the users in the organization for phase two. And in phase two, we will be rolling out, I would say, more complex features of the tool. Like I mentioned earlier, that kind of working out those billable versus non-billable hours, getting some finances behind the project as well, budgets, things like that. That's something I didn't want to introduce in phase one because it is slightly more complex than simply the utilization aspect of the tool. So didn't want to overwhelm anyone with that. So that is definitely something we'll be rolling out in phase two. And we'll also be rolling out to wider teams in the organization, including my own team, which is the PMO team. So I'm sure they will find that tool incredibly useful. We are kind of the Smartsheet super users, I suppose, in our organization. So I'm sure that'll be a pretty straightforward rollout for us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily. We're really proud of what we've been able to do together with LGP, and we're looking forward to supporting you going forwards. And thank you again. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience today.
No problem. Thank you.